The wind carried dust across the barren plains as the sun sagged low, painting the horizon in bleeding shades of orange and red, and inside the old saloon at the edge of Dry Creek, where laughter had long since died and only shadows kept company with broken men, sat Jedediah Crow, a lonely rancher with calloused hands and eyes haunted by years of silence, the kind of silence that comes after burying a wife too young and a child too small, the kind of silence that gnawed on a man's bones until every sound of life around him felt like a lie. And across the dimly lit room, slumped against the wall with hair matted, face bruised, and clothes torn, was a woman no one seemed to notice, a woman whose presence felt like a ghost returned from a battlefield, and when Jed's gaze met hers, he saw something he hadn't seen in years, desperation, the kind that begged not for saving but for release, and when he rose from his seat and walked toward her, the floorboards creaking beneath his boots, the saloon fell quieter still, as though the building itself knew what was about to unfold, and when he stopped before her, she lifted her head just enough for him to hear the whisper escape her trembling lips, "Please, just end it," and the weight of those words struck Jed harder than any bullet ever could, for they carried with them the story of suffering too deep for most men to bear, and though his hands had once wielded a gun in war and a branding iron in peace, he had never held the power of deciding whether another soul's torment should end with a single strike, yet here she was, a stranger, looking at him as though he was the last chance she had left, and Jed, torn between pity and horror, lowered himself beside her, his voice rough from years of disuse. "I don't reckon I'm the man for that kind of mercy, miss," but her eyes, hollow yet burning with urgency, filled with tears as she reached weakly into a torn pocket and pulled out a single silver dollar, pressing it into his hand with fingers that shook as though they carried the weight of the world, whispering, "Please, I'll pay you. Just $1. That's all I've got, but it'll buy me peace." And in that moment Jed's heart cracked, for here was a soul so broken she thought her life was worth less than a loaf of bread, and he thought of the nights he had sat alone with a bottle, whispering to the dark that he wished someone would end his pain, and he knew that if fate had put him in her place, he might have begged the same, so though his chest burned with dread, he slipped the coin into his pocket and nodded slow, pulling the knife he carried always, not for war but for work, its blade reflecting the last light of day, and when she saw it her shoulders sagged, not with fear but with strange relief, as if knowing her suffering might finally be over. Yet Jed's hand trembled as he held it, his mind torn between two truths, that ending her agony might be mercy, but that sparing her might be hope, and as the saloon watched in stunned silence, the air thick with dust and doom, Jed raised the knife, his eyes locked on hers, searching for any flicker that might beg him to stop, but all he saw was a soul already gone too far into darkness, a soul that believed itself unworthy of tomorrow, and his breath caught as his arm shook, the weight of the dollar burning in his pocket like a brand, and time seemed to slow, each second dragging like a noose rope, until finally, with a voice that cracked like dry earth, Jed whispered, "No, miss, I ain't gonna kill you, but I'll end the life they gave you," and with a sudden motion he slashed the ropes binding her wrists, cutting through the cords that dug bloody into her skin, and the gasp that followed was not just hers but the room's, for no one had expected a man like Jed to choose life instead of death, and as she fell into his arms, sobbing like a child who'd been saved too late but saved all the same, he held her, shaking, the knife still in his hand but no longer a weapon, now just a tool of freedom, and the silver dollar slipped from his pocket, clattering to the floor, rolling in a circle before coming to rest between them, a reminder that what she had thought was payment for her death had become the first coin in the purchase of her survival, and Jed, his voice raw, whispered in her ear, "Your life ain't for sale, not for $1, not for all the gold in the West, and if it's peace you're looking for, I'll ride with you, till you find it," and the woman, still trembling, clutched at his shirt as though it were the only rope keeping her from falling into the abyss, and for the first time in years Jed felt something stir in his chest, not just sorrow but purpose, the kind of purpose a man only finds when he saves someone else from the very grave he once dug for himself. And outside the wind howled, carrying away the last light of day, leaving only the glow of lanterns inside the saloon where two broken souls, bound by pain and chance, had chosen life over death. And though Jed's hands still shook from the weight of what could have been, he knew deep down that this night would be the one he'd carry to his own grave, not as a scar but as proof that mercy takes many forms, sometimes even in the refusal to grant a dying wish. And if you, dear listener, have felt this story cut into your heart the way it cut into mine, then I ask you not to let it fade into the dust of forgotten trails. Subscribe to this channel, ride with us through more tales of sorrow, grit, and redemption, and together we'll keep these Wild West stories alive, because out here in the frontier of memory, every voice matters, every scar tells a tale, and no life, not even one thought worth only $1, is ever truly beyond saving.